you've really got to admire dedication. Now, I may not be the most dedicated person to my own channel. I do my best, and my best is sometimes not the greatest. Sometimes I basically say I will do a commander deck, and somebody has to remind me 4 months later that I said I would do that. Sometimes the person who I owe that apology to is Zach Smithin or other 6574. Man, when you guys put your names together like that, it makes it really hard. Anyway, Zach has been requesting decks, one specific deck for 5 months, which is almost as long as I've been doing this. 6 months is about as long as I've been doing these videos. So they said, hey, love your videos. Could you do a Magus Lucia Kane deck? Nice deck. I want to see you break Magus Lucia Kane. Magus Lucia Kane, please. Magus Lucia Kane. I still want a deck built around Magus Lucia Kane. Magus Lucia Kane. Second, can I please get Magus Lucia Kane? Lots of Magus Lucia Kane, please. Lucky number 7, episode 10 of asking for $15 Magus Lucia Kane. Episode 11 of asking for $15 Magus Lucia Kane. You know, at a certain point, I feel kind of mean by not actually making this deck. So, let's go ahead and talk about Magus Lucia Kane. Magus Lucia Kane is a 4-mana 1/1 commander, and she's got a couple of neat abilities. One we're basically going to be ignoring, and the other one we will be focusing on. The first one we're ignoring puts a 1/1 counter on target creature every single upkeep. That's really cute. The one we're going to be abusing the hell out of is called Psychic Stimulus. We get 2 mana by tapping her, and then the next spell we cast with X in its mana cost, we get to copy that spell this turn. Oh boy. Wait until you see what we will be doing with this woman. This is a commander that would like us to cast big, huge X-cost spells and then double those spells. It's a lot like another deck I just made, but very, very much more focused. So, what are we going to be doing with her? Primarily, we are going to be casting things like Fireball. Let's start with our big burn win conditions. Every one of these will do massive damage to our opponents. Fireball costs 1 more for every target beyond the first and deals X damage divided evenly, rounded down among that number of targets. Of course, this means if we pay 12 into the Fireball or 13 into the Fireball, it will hit 3 targets and deal 11 damage, or not 11, 9 damage to each of them. And then Magus Lucia Kane will copy that damage. Well, 9 damage will be split, so it's more like 4 damage to each of them. It's not a whole lot of damage the way I'm describing it, but trust me, the numbers are going to get really confusing really fast, and really big really fast. But the next card we have is Rolling Thunder. Deal X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or players. Once again, this is doing the same thing as Fireball. Fall of the Titans. Deal X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures and or players. And if we've cast another spell previously, we can cast this for 1x less, making it far easier to get big damage out of this. Fall of the Titans is really neat for this deck because we can just copy it with Magus Lucia Kane and basically choose one person to take the X twice, while 2 other people will take the X once, which is really, really cool for getting rid of a single problematic player. Hurricane deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player. This does include us, so please be careful when you cast this. And Jaya's Immolating Inferno deals X damage to each of up to 3 targets. This is going to be our opponents. We are never casting this to hit creatures. We are always casting this to hurt our opponents a lot. So I said that the numbers get kind of confusing. Why do they do that? Well, remember how our commander says tap, copy the next spell, and gain 2 mana? Well, These 5 cards all copy our commander's ability. So if you look at Kiora's Follower, this lets us untap a target permanent. If we untap our commander, then we will get another grouping of mana from her. But you don't just get more mana, you get more copies of her ability. So let me paint you a scenario. Let's say we are tapping our commander for 2 mana. Magus is giving us 2, and she'll copy the next spell that we cast, and we plan on casting Jaya's Immolating Inferno to deal X damage to up to 3 targets. Let's say we are only worried right now. We are only worried about getting X mana. So we've paid 2 actual lands worth into Jaya's Immolating Inferno. So right now there is 2 damage aimed at all of our opponents. And Magus Lucia Kane is going to end up copying that spell, so it's 4 damage to each of our opponents, right? Well, no, because Kiora's Follower is going to untap Magus Lucia Kane. Now we can sink 4 mana into the X of Jaya's Immolating Inferno, and it will copy twice. So now, instead of dealing 4 damage to all of our opponents, this is dealing 12 damage to all of our opponents. If we have another card like Kiora's Follower, say Vizier of Tumbling Sands, and we do that again, now we are paying 6 into Jaya's Immolating Inferno, and we are going to be copying it twice. So we get our initial copy and then 2 more copies on top of that. So that is 6 times 3. That is 12 or 18 damage to each of our opponents. This can get very stupid very, very, very quickly because we have lots of ways to stack copies on top of copies. And I'm probably explaining this poorly. The math might actually work out to be far worse for our opponents, but I'm recording this at 5 in the morning, so you will forgive my math, and you will judge me in the comment section below. But we have Kiora's Follower, Vizier of Tumbling Sands, Lorith of the Healing House, Forensic Researcher, and Kelpie Guide. Each and every one of these can untap any permanent we control. In a pinch, these will act like ramp pieces, untapping any of our lands, but when our commander is out, they will be untapping our commander so that we get lots and lots of copies of our commander's ability. But that's not all, Billy Mays said, because we have 6 more cards that copy cards, beginning with Swarm Intelligence. When we cast an instant or sorcery, we get to copy that spell. Double Vision. The first instant or sorcery we cast, we get to copy it. Tomb of Horrors Adventurer. The second spell we cast each turn, we get to copy it. If we finish the dungeon, copy it twice. That part's never happening, unless we target the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer with Aggressive Biomancy, which creates X tokens that are copies of target creature we control, except they have when this creature ETBs, it fights a creature that we don't control. Let me paint you a funny haha scenario. You drop the Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, you've got plenty of mana because this is a big mana deck. Tomb of Horrors touches the field, you get the initiative, you get a land, whatever. Your second spell is going to get copied. Our second spell is Aggressive Biomancy, and we are tapping our commander into the Aggressive Biomancy. This means we have 2 copies of the Aggressive Biomancy. If we pay just the base amount, the 4 mana into the Aggressive Biomancy, then that will spawn 3 more Tomb of Horrors Adventurer, dropping us that much further into the dungeon. Meaning that the next turn, if we cast a spell, we will copy it that many more times. It gets kind of stupid. Galvanic Iteration can also copy stuff that we have as well, and we can cast it from the graveyard. But I haven't shown you the dumbest one, Doppelgang. For each of X target permanents, create X tokens that are copies of that permanent. I don't want to do the math of what happens when you use a Doppelgang on a bunch of Kiora's Followers and lands so that you have tons of mana to sink into a Jaya's Immolating Inferno that's going to drop on the board, and it's going to be your second spell because you're cool. You're going to do a Galvanic Iteration, and then your second spell is going to be the Jaya's. So you're going to have, 15 copies of Jaya's with, 50 mana sunk into it because of the 20 Kiora's followers you've made. I don't want to do the math for this, guys. I don't want to do Magus Lucia Kane math. I just know that it's lethal. It's very lethal. It's thousands of damage lethal. I don't know what the numbers look like. Don't ask me what the numbers look like when you do this to people, or this to people, or this to people. Any of these to people. I don't know what those numbers are. I just know they're huge, and I don't want to count. Mirror Shield is also a card we're running in to protect our commander from anybody who might want our commander to die. And we've got 5 recursion pieces as well. All of these enter the battlefield and return a instant or sorcery from our graveyard to our hand. Flood of Recollection actually gets cast to do it. Remember, we've got cards that clone creatures, so these enter the battlefield as many times as you clone, getting as many dumb cards back to your hand. I'm done. I'm done talking about this part of the video. I just a move to the next part of the video. Obviously, with so much dumb math, we want to be able to draw lots of cards. So let's talk about the cards we're going to be doing to make sure that that happens. We got Eureka Moment, one of the 11 draw spells in this deck. This draws us 2 cards and then drops a land on the board because we need lots of lands to make the deck work. Urban Evolution draws us 3 cards and drops a land on the board for the exact same reasons. Then we have the X cost cards, lots of them. Transcendent Message has Convoke. Not that that will ever matter. We get to draw X cards. We're going to copy this with our commander. Finale of Revelation. Draw X cards. If X is 10 or more, shuffle your graveyard into your library, then draw X cards, then untap 5 lands, and then you have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. We're going to copy this with our commander, draw like 20 cards, and then get all of our cards refreshed, and then we have no maximum hand size, and then people are going to wonder why they're not dead yet, and we're going to say because we're in our villain arcs, and we want to monologue for like a turn or two. Hydroid Krasis, when we cast this, we gain half X life, and then draw half X cards, and then it comes down with that many 1/1 counters. Expansion Explosion deals damage to any target and also draws a player X cards. It's also got a copy ability as well, because why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it? Silver Scrutiny draws us X cards, and if X is 3 or less, we can cast it at instant speed. Stroke of Genius is always cast at instant speed and draws us X cards. Mind Spring is sorcery speed and draws us X cards. Invoke the Fire Mine draws X cards or deals X damage to a creature or a player. Yes, this means even our draw package has the ability to be wombo-comboed into oblivion to turn somebody's life points into what things look like after Clint Eastwood shoots them. And then we have Pull for Tomorrow. Draw X cards and then discard a singular itty-bitty card. Whew! We will be drawing through our deck at lightning speed, but we also need to make sure that our opponents don't have the chance to win the game. So let's remove all of their toys. We are running a nice round 15 card removal package to make sure that we are nice and safe as we play through the game. Beginning with Repeal, return a non-land permanent with mana value X to its owner's hand, and then it is a cantrip, so we get to draw a card right afterwards. Use it on 1 card or use our commander to use it on 2 cards. It's gonna do its job. Decimate blows up an artifact, creature, land, and an enchantment for 4 mana. 1 card, 4 mana, blows up 4 cards. It's fantastic. Meteor Golem, because why the hell wouldn't we? You know what's funnier than playing a Meteor Golem? Copying a billion Meteor Golems with our creature copy spells. And blowing up everything everyone loves, and then laughing about it as we watch them cry that a 7-cent card nobody but me likes is destroying everything that they loved. Meteor Golem is wonderful. Run it in decks that can abuse it. I built lots of decks that can abuse it. Wreck and Rebuild is modal. It can either mill us 5 cards and put a land on the battlefield or blow up an artifact or enchantment. Trigon Predator, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, destroy an artifact or enchantment they control. This is also a really good card to clone so that we have lots of ways to blow up everybody's mana rocks. Primal Might is a fight spell that gives a creature XX and then it fights a creature we do not control. Negate can stop a non-creature spell. Return to Nature can blow up an artifact, enchantment, or exile a graveyard. Abrade can blow up a creature or an artifact. Curse of Swine can exile X creatures, and for every creature exiled this way, we can give people a boar creature token. Resculpt can exile an artifact or a creature, giving them a bad token afterwards. Wash Away can be cleave costed to counter any spell or one costed to counter a commander. Chaos Warp can get rid of any permanent on the board. Repulsive Mutation can counter any card based on the power of a creature, and it has an X cost, so we can sink about 1 billion counters into something. As you know what this does, because I'm not going to do the math for anything ever again with this deck, because the next card we have is super confusing. This is Illuminate. Did you forget this existed? I didn't even know this existed. But here's Illuminate. This card's super cool. It has 1 and X. It deals X damage to target creature. Pretty simple, pretty basic. If we pay 3 extra mana into it with a kicker cost, it'll deal X damage to a creature's controller. And if we pay 4 mana on top of that kicker cost, we will then draw X cards as well. So to paint you a scenario with this card, if we pay 3 mana for the card, that is 2 into the X and 1 into the Illuminate, and then we kicker it, we are paying 6 mana total to deal 2 damage to a creature and get 2 damage to a player. If our commander gave mana to that ability, then we will deal 4 damage divided between 2 creatures, and then deal 2 damage divided between, or 2 damage to 2 opponents, or 4 damage to 1 opponent, depending on how we do it. There's lots of ways you can mess with this. If you sink like 20 mana into it, then it gets super nutty, blowing up a creature and also turning somebody's life total into nothing. And if you desperately need to pay 4 to draw cards, it has the ability to do that in a pinch. I think it's a super neat card for a deck like this, and I think we need more dirtily dumb bad cards in Magic the Gathering that people like me with possibly autistic brains can just break. Then we have Exocrine. Ravenous, so when it drops on the board with X 1/1 counters, if X is 5 or more, we draw a card. When this enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to every player and each creature. This is a board wipe, but this is also another win con. If we have more life than our opponents, we just drop Exocrine down for like 10 into the X with our commanders, so it deals 20 damage to everything. We go Scorched Earth. We are not eliminating 1 player at a time. Our goal is eliminate everybody at once because we are tired and it is 5 in the morning. How are we going to afford all these cards? Well, let's talk about that. We're going to have to run a pretty thick ramp package and more lands than the usual, like 35 or 36. So to facilitate that, we have 13 ramp pieces to begin with and 37 lands. The first ramp piece is Elvish Rejuvenator. Touches the board, reveal the top 5 of your library, put a land from among them on the battlefield. Slimefoot Survey has Domain, and it says we look at the top X cards of our library, where X is the basic land types, so it's going to be 3. Put 1 of those on top of the library and the rest on the bottom. It also lets us get 2 basic land onto the battlefield, or 2 lands with a basic land type, so we can actually grab dual lands. Then we have Honored Heirloom, gives us 1 mana, lets us exile cards from graveyard instant speed. Map the Frontier gives us 2 basic lands on the battlefield. Font of Fertility, Dawnshredder Elk, and Wayfarer's Bauble are all basically the same card. They touch the board, we pay some mana, we sack them, we get any basic land from our deck onto the battlefield. Search for Tomorrow gets a basic land on the battlefield untapped. It also can be played on turn 1 with Suspend. Wood Elves gets a forest from the deck onto the battlefield untapped. Cultivate gets 2 basic land cards. 1 of them goes to our hand, 1 of them goes onto the battlefield. Path to the Animus gets 2 lands, puts them onto the battlefield tapped. And Rasheen Meanderer gives us 4 mana that can be used only for casting X spells. And Rasheen, oh Rasheen. Rasheen from Modern Horizons 3 enters the battlefield, milling us 6 cards. We put any card with X in its mana cost, so probably one of our win cons, into our hand. Then we reveal any number of cards with X in their mana cost from our hand by tapping this card, and we add 2 mana for every card revealed with X. This card can give us like 8 to 10 mana if we have drawn enough cards. She's kind of freaking nutty as a supplementary commander to our own. She is bonkers. But let's move on to lands. We've got 8 forest, 5 mountains, and 6 islands for our basic lands. Moving into the dual lands, we have the Snarl cycle in Vine Glimmer Snarl, Frostboil Snarl, and Game Trail. All these enter the battlefield untapped if we reveal a mountain or whichever land it cares about. Then we've got the filter lands, Mossfire Valley, Overflowing Basin, and Ferris Lake. We need more copies of Ferris Lake to get it down to the same price as Overflowing Basin. Please, Wizards of the Coast, I beg of you. And then in our searchable lands, we have Cinderglade and Tangled Islet, because for some reason it's like 70 cents to get a dual land that is blue and red, and I do not understand it. And while technically it is within the budget of the deck, I'm moving on to the fetching lands. That's what I'm doing. We have 7 fetching lands. Ash Baron gets any basic land from our deck into our hand. Promising Vein and Shire Terrace are the same card. They both come down untapped, give us some mana. We can pay 1 mana into them, sack them to get a colored mana out of the deck. Bountiful Landscape, we can cycle it in a pinch. It can sack itself to get a basic land from our deck onto the battlefield, and we can tap it to add a colorless mana at the same speed as a normal land. And then our slower lands are Escape Tunnel, Terramorphic Expanse, and Evolving Wilds, with our Omni lands being the ever-present Command Tower and Exotic Orchard, and my usual utility land of Pit of Offerings to give us a budget version of a Bojuka Bog that any deck can use and can also tap for lots and lots of colors. That's it for how we're going to afford everything in this deck. So what would you do if you have the money to afford things in another sense? With money that you could be paying to me as a channel member. I'm kidding, don't do that. Anyway, on to the upgrades. Honestly, the strongest upgrade you can give this deck right off the bat is Unbound Flourishing. While it costs the same amount as the deck itself does, anytime you cast a permanent spell with mana value that contains X, we can double the value of X. When you cast an instance or sorcery or activate an ability that contains X, we can copy that spell. It's just another copy, just another copy of our commander, and it is ridiculously insane. Awaken the Woods is an easy way to lead up to a Haymaker, creating X Green Forest Dryad land creature tokens. Copy it a billion times and suddenly you have enough mana to win the game with any number of ways. Lightning Greaves and its baby Swiftfoot Boots are ways to keep our commander on the board. Twinning Staff lets us copy copies, and then we copy copies, and then copies copy. Open the Way is one of the best ways to ramp in the deck if you have access to it. You pay X, X will always be 3. Get 3 lands onto the battlefield and just copy it with our commander. Cracklewood Power is another win con. Deal 5 times X damage to each of up to X targets. You just crackle with power and sink all the mana you possibly can into it while using your commander, and now suddenly you're doing 5 times what? We sink 5 mana into each X. We spend 15, 17 mana into this. Suddenly we're doing 5 times 5, 25 damage to each player. Now we copy it. Now it's 50 damage to each player. But if we have other copy stuff on the board, which we always will, we don't have to spend that much mana into it. God, I'm so tired of thinking. The Rampaging Yaoguai is also cool because it lets us blow up any number of artifacts or enchantments based on the X. Moloch has a fight attached to it, and we can copy that with our commander. Fanatic of Ronus is a hyper ramp if we have things with enough power, which is easy to do because our commander distributes power onto cards. Animist Awakening is an X-cost ramp spell that's super good. Reliquary Tower lets us keep all of the cards in our hand in later games. I do not think this card is necessary in most decks, but we have a lot of big draw, so maybe run it. Spore Assist is hyper ramp with what our commander does, and Beast Within is another more modular way of blowing up cards. I just can't fit it into the budget of my $15 decks, despite how many times it's been printed. I don't understand, Wizards. I don't understand. Print more Beast Withins. I really want this card to become like $15 deck budget available. Please? Hey, anyway, how do I feel about this monstrosity that I made? In conclusion, holy shit, I've made a monster. This thing can divvy out so much damage to so many people, and I am 100% certain that whatever the hell I have put together here will be notoriously unfun for other players. This is a deck you pick when you want to be the villain. This is a deck you pick when you want to play 3v1, and you are willing to be honest with every other player that, hey guys, just so you know, this is a race against the clock, and all of you are currently asphyxiating. That's what you need to do when you play this deck. Maybe give it a test run the first few times to get a hang of it, but after you know how this thing works, after you know how to run it, even at the shoestring budget this thing is built on, its damage capacity is nigh near infinite. I cannot stress this enough. This thing, without actual infinite combos, can go damn near infinite on damage. I do not know what the upper threshold of damage that this deck can possibly do, but I have a challenge. I have a challenge for somebody in my comment section. Anyone, any one of you who would like to take this exact deck list and calculate what the maximum damage output yield could possibly be, the person who comes up while showing their work the highest number of possible damage that Magus Lucia Kane can do in this exact deck build, I don't know what I'm going to do. I will do something fun. I will make any series of decks that you want me to do. I will do whatever you need to make it worth your while to sit down and do the level of calculation that I absolutely refuse to do. But holy crap, in just this deck, I swear to God, I don't even know how you would get the maximum amount of damage out, but it's gotta be huge. It's like you have Kiora's out, right? Kiora's out along with all of these guys, and also maximum mana, aggressive biomancy, and doppelgang have been cast. So now you have what, like 1,200 of these on the board after all of the copies, and then you recur them all with the recursion cards that are in the deck, these guys right here, and then you recast those copy cards again on all these, copying them even further now because of Magus Lucia Kane, and then afterwards you finally, with true mercy in your eyes, cast Jaya's Immolating Inferno, untapping the commander like somewhere between 5 and 10,000 times, creating just that many copies. I have no idea what that number looks like, but I want to find out what that number looks like. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I sincerely hope that I have made a satisfactory version of Magus Lucia Kane for you, Zach. If this is what you've been asking for, you specifically asked me to break her. So I am breaking her in a way where I cannot calculate the upper echelon of damage that she is capable of. Let me know what you think. If you guys haven't already, like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff, comment on the video, share this with friends. If you've got a friend who loves magic and is a mathematician, share this specifically with them so that they can get on figuring out what the upper threshold of this deck's damage output can be. Anyway, I'm gonna go get some sleep. Insert the video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Britzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Nabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, Sagitt, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.